Okay, we're back in the morning, and it's great news. You can actually see this has already kind of doubled and started to fall back now. So this is fully, risen as much as it will. And here you can actually see, hopefully, it's probably difficult to see because of the lighting, but you definitely have a bunch of bubbles, and there's a nice kind of spongy look to it. It's definitely risen. You know, we had about this much after I added the flour, and you can see bubbles right here. So let me get the top off. You can really see the bubbles a little bit better on the side there. So this is actually quite good. This is actually surprising a little bit how quickly this is developing. In the past, it's taken me sometimes maybe up to 2 or 3 days before I've seen this kind of like nice rise. So I think it's just good conditions right now because it's winter time and we're heating. So, your mileage may vary. Don't get discouraged if you don't see bubbles quite this uniform, quite this quickly, but just keep at it. So what we're going to do, I'm going to show you this with the spoon here, just to show you kind of like the consistency that, it's kind of nice and bubbly. You can see all the bubbles in there. You can hear it. So this is actually quite good already. I'm quite surprised. In the past, I think, it's taken a bit longer to get to this level. And there's quite a kind of like strong smell too. Again, not unpleasant, just this kind of like really kind of, strong, doughy kind of, rye smell. That's totally normal. It's fine. So don't worry about that. If you're seeing this kind of consistency, you're doing really well. So regardless, you got to remember what I said. You're always doubling the amount of flour you have. So we have 4, heaping spoonfuls of flour in here. So we're going to double that. We're going to put in 4 more. And see what happens. 1, 2, 3, and 1 more. I'm a simple kind of guy. I can't count and do other things at the same time. So anyway. Gonna add some water to this, get that same consistency, and what you will see is that the bacteria and the yeast are getting more and more active. So now you saw how nice of a rise you got after 12 hours. What you'll see after this is probably after about 4 or 5 hours, this will double again. I'll show you guys what that looks like, of course. I'll check in and let you know, what it's going to look like. But basically, it's going to look a lot like this one over here. It's going to, double in size and go up kind of to the top of this bowl. And a quick note on this doubling thing. Obviously, if it's taking your particular starter a little bit longer to, start, getting active and really doubling the or raising the dough, and you can't just keep doubling it forever because you're going to end up wasting a lot of flour. Right now this has 8 spoonfuls of flour. If you double that, that's 16. The next time you go to do it, it's 32. Then it's 64. You're talking probably like a whole bag of flour. So it's, you don't want to keep doing that. So if yours hasn't kind of done, a similar growth, what you can do is after it's risen and you're ready to do the next feeding, what you can do is take out half of what you have and then just double the other half. So if you know what I mean, like right now this is going to have 8, and let's say at the next feeding, I don't want to put in another 8. I can just take out 4. I can use that flour in some other recipe, maybe make pancakes or do whatever you want with it, and basically just add in 4 more again instead of having to add 8. So I hope that makes sense. But if you do keep doubling it, kind of like ad nauseum, you're gonna end up with a ton of flour going in there, and you don't really need that, and you don't want to waste it. So in the past, when I've done it, is I've just used it up for like making pancakes or something like that. I'm gonna add a little more water here. Okay, so once we get this up, sorry, my throat's a bit dry. I should probably be drinking some of the water. Once we have this all mixed up, I'm going to let it sit again for, probably like 6 to 8 hours. You should start seeing it, just doubling in size a lot quicker. The point is that you want to get to the point where your starter is so active that it can complete its rise and double in volume in about 2 to 3 hours. Once you see that, you're pretty much ready to use that as a starter and actually bake a bread with it. So like I said, this can take 2, 3, maybe 4 days. It really depends on your conditions, your temperature, humidity. There's a whole bunch of stuff, and I'm sure there's a lot of like scientific kind of things that you can read about this, and it explains it and whatever. But as I said in my first video, you really don't need to worry too much. The point is just start and experiment, and you're gonna find a process that works for you, and it's not so difficult. So anyway, so this is looking pretty good. I might add just maybe a drop or 2 more water, but that's pretty good. Now here, you can definitely see tons and tons of bubbles in this guy. There's a really pleasant, nice smell to this. You can see it kind of like have a little jiggly consistency. What we are going to do is, this is ready to make a bread now. Depends on the size of bread you want to make. What I find is that this amount, which is basically the 8 heaping spoonfuls of flour starter, this is enough to make bread from about half a kilo of flour. So usually I bake much bigger breads. I usually go with a whole bag, so like a whole kilo like this, and that's what I will make for one portion. But that's actually a really big bread, and most people probably wouldn't get that big of a bread. So I would recommend just get to this point. You're going to save some time and just do half a kilo. So I'm going to show you guys, Thanksgiving's coming up really soon. I'm going to show you a really nice bread that you can make. And it's like an ornamental little bread. You can slice into small little things, almost like a bun size, serving. And it goes really well with any kind of savory things, any kind of sweet things. And I'll show you guys that next. And I recommend you to try it out. Now, if you're just starting out and you don't have a starter, don't worry. You can pretty much just think of this as your little yeast mixture. Like I said in the first video, you might even want to be starting with, if you've never made a bread, just get one of the little yeast packets or one of those little live yeast, cubes or squares, and just start from that. And you won't regret it. You can basically just, get that started with a little bit of warm water and flour, and just pretend that this is it. So that's what you would have, is like a little cube of yeast or a packet of yeast. Follow the instructions of whatever it says on there. Usually I think the cubes that we have here in Europe, they're enough to basically give rise to a whole kilo of flour. So you can even just get away with using half a cube. The packets of dry yeast, I'm not sure, just check whatever it says. Even if you put the whole thing in, it's not really going to do anything. It'll probably just kind of have maybe a little bit more of a yeasty taste, but don't worry about that. So yeah, I'm going to show you guys next how to knead this into the bread, and we'll pick it up from there. And I'll show you guys. And again, just cover this back and let it sit for another 6, maybe 8 hours, and I'll check back in. So we're ready to start the bread baking process. First and super important thing, you always want to save some of your starter. Several people, on forums and stuff that I've read, have commented where they've totally forgotten this step and actually used up all of their starter, and now they don't have any sourdough left. They have to start the whole process again. So first and foremost, get a next batch of starter going. So I got 2 heaping spoonfuls of flour in here. I'm going to get in here, get 2 spoonfuls of this, add it to that, add some water, mix it up, put it out in the fridge. So that's like step number 1. Don't do anything before you do that. Critical. Next, I told you guys I don't really like measuring things. I haven't measured it, but that's roughly half a kilo of flour, from my handy dandy bag here. I've left some in the bag. I'll show you guys why later when we're forming the little loaves. And I'm going to end up adding just a couple of things to the starter, mixing it up, and then dumping it in the middle here. And then basically just start turning over the flour into the mixture and just add water as I start kneading it to make the dough. Now what I add is super, super basic. It's optional. You really don't have to do it. But I add ground flaxseed. So basically I get my handy dandy, flax seeds whole, and then I basically just put these in a coffee grinder. I don't drink coffee, but I do have a coffee grinder, and put it in there and then just grind it up. So I don't know, this is probably about maybe 3 or 4 spoonfuls that I've ground up, and then I dump in a little bit of salt. That's it. I don't put anything else. The flax seeds are a great source of omega fatty 3 acids, which are really healthy, and especially as a vegan, you want to make sure you get a good source of that. Like several things do have them: walnuts, chia seeds, flax seeds are a great source. You also get really great fiber and a bunch of other nutrients and minerals and stuff from it. So you'll probably see I'm using white flour here. Now I know from a health standpoint, we could be using whole flour, but in my view, as a vegan, if you're eating whole foods predominantly, which is what I do, you're getting so much fiber anyway that I don't think it really matters that you have less fiber in the bread, and it definitely gives it kind of a softer and more fluffy kind of texture. So that's my take on it. And plus, since I'm adding flaxseed for the omega-3, I'm getting a bunch of fiber from that anyway. You'll see when it's all mixed up, and especially once it's baked, it almost looks like kind of like a half brown bread anyway. So so that's it. I don't have a stand, so I can't show you as I'm mixing it, but again, first step, save some of your starter, put that in the fridge. Next step, dump the flax seeds, the salt in here, stir it up, dump it out here, start folding the flour into the mixture. As it starts getting too dry, you add more water. I'm going to show you guys in a little bit what it's supposed to look like at the end. So now it's fully kneaded. You can see the flax seeds are kind of split up throughout. For anybody who's really interested in the, again, the measurements, I used roughly half a bowl's worth of water to get this consistency. You can see that it's, it's firm. It's not quite sticking to my finger, but kind of close. So you can see it kind of like, if I'm pulling up, see how it kind of sticks a little bit, but then it kind of lets go. That's the consistency that I like. The more water you put, the softer it'll be, and kind of the, softer the bread will be too. If you like it really firm, you can obviously make it more firm than this. This is, I think, a good kind of middle of the road. I like my breads fairly kind of hearty. So, I don't like the real fluffy kind of breads. So I think this is a good consistency for that. Now you're going to just let it rest. So basically now you're going to have all the helpful bacteria and yeast working on this new batch of flour that it's gotten, and it's going to start rising. So just to kind of keep it covered, just use a light, kitchen cloth or whatever you want to call this, and then just cover it up and let it sit. I like to go, at least an hour or so. And then I'm going to come back and knead it again, make it into a nice little ball shape again, and then I'll give it like another hour, and then I'll check back in with you guys and show you what it's like. Okay, so didn't really have time the way that I wanted, so this ended up actually sitting a little bit longer than I said, but that's totally fine. I've kneaded it twice, and this is what it's looking like right now. You can see it's gotten a lot bigger. It's nice and kind of squishy. And I'm going to knead it one more time. I'm going to chop it in half, and I'm going to show you guys how to make pain d'épi. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm assuming it's French. But anyway, it's a beautiful little ornamental bread, and it's really nice. While I'm doing this, I've got the oven preheating. I've got it set for 220 Celsius, which I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. I'll put it in the description. But I think it's around 450-ish, but anyway, don't quote me on that. Check the description below. So let me cut this in half. I'm gonna make 2 little balls, and then I'll show you what to do with it next. Okay, so I've got 2 little balls now made from the big piece, and this is a little bit difficult to show you guys because I need 2 hands and I don't have a stand. So anyway, long story short, I told you I saved some of the flour. What you are gonna do is lightly flour your surface here, and you're going to stretch these out into kind of like an oval shape, a flat like oval shape, and kind of like picture it kind of being like an oval this way, and you're going to take it and fold it in thirds, and the second fold is going to cover the the first one, kind of fold towards the middle. And what you do is once you folded up that one from the bottom, you're going to pinch along the seams and have kind of like a nice little, almost like a baguette kind of roll shape. And once you have that kind of pinched along the edges, you're going to just kind of not roll it, but just a little bit kind of form it and stretch it and kind of get it into like a long, an elongated shape. I'm going to show it to you guys in a second when I'm done with it. I'll have one of them done and one of them partially done, so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. But yeah, just kind of picture it in your mind for now. Okay, so you can see the oval shape here, and then, you know, like I said, picture kind of folding it in thirds like that, and then what you do is you pinch along the seam and you get this nice little baguette shape. So you're going to do that with the second one too, and just kind of lightly stretch this out to be a little bit longer. You want it about as long as the pan that you're going to cook them in. I'll show it to you in a second. So they are now both formed. I'm going to put a little bit of flour on both of them. I'm going to kind of get them a little bit more stretched out to the length of the pan. And then I'm going to put some cornmeal on the pan so they don't stick to the pan. I'll show you that in a second, and we'll get them onto the pan. Okay, so now you can see them. I've put them in the pan. I've got this little cornmeal underneath so they don't stick. They're lightly floured. You can see that they're not like kind of shrinking back together. Sometimes if you haven't let the dough rise enough and you haven't really worked it enough, you haven't kneaded it enough, the glutens are kind of like real, I don't know, stiff, and it's hard to describe it, but basically the bread will kind of like be shrinking back. If you're finding that, you just let it sit for longer and then just kind of, you know, nicely stretch it out again, and it should kind of stay put to the size that you've stretched. So that's just a little tip. So anyway, now the fun part. What you want to do is grab a clean pair of scissors. If you have kitchen scissors or whatever, this is just a regular pair of cheapo scissors, doesn't matter, just make sure they're clean. And what you are going to do is snip into the bread without cutting all the way down to the bottom, but mostly, so like maybe down to like around here. And so you're going to like snip across at an angle, like you can see the scissors are at an angle, you know, maybe like, I don't know, 45 degrees-ish or whatever. You're going to snip along the bread and make these little sections. And when you have a little section, what you do is you kind of turn one this way and you turn the next one the other way. And then the next one goes this way. You just keep alternating the sections. I'll show it to you in a second. It's kind of hard to do this with just one hand here, and I need to get a camera stand at some point. But anyway, that's another story. I'll show you guys in a second what I mean by this. So you can see I've made 2 cuts in so far. And this is what gives this bread the nice little pointy things. It makes it look like a wheat stalk, and I think that's what the pain d'épi means, actually, if I remember right. But anyway, so you're kind of just shifting one to one side and shifting the other cut to the other side. So, you know, that's all you want right there. This next one will go out here. I just didn't cut it probably far enough. But I'm going to do this for the whole thing, and I'll show you guys what it looks like. Okay, so I've done both of the little loaves of bread here, and you get this nice little shape. We're ready to throw this in the oven and let it bake for probably about 30 to 40 minutes, depending on how crispy you like it. I'll keep an eye on it, and I'll show you guys what it looks like. Another thing that I will occasionally do, not always, so it's kind of optional, is put a little bowl of water into the oven when you're baking the bread as well. It increases the moisture, obviously, a little steam in the oven, and yeah, I'll put this in there right now. Okay, so it's been about 30-35 minutes, and I'm pretty sure the bread is looking done, so we're going to take it out. You can see the water down there at the bottom. Okay, here is the bread. Looking quite nice, I think. I'm going to turn off the oven. Get this closed up. Sorry. So, yeah, here's what they look like. You know, your mileage may vary. If I had made the breads a little bit thinner, these points would obviously be a little bit kind of more pointy, and yeah, if you make the cuts a little bit bigger, you can get them to kind of stick out a little bit more. It depends on how you know, how you like the shape. I probably would have made this a little bit thinner, but whatever. This is what I always say: just do it. You know, do what you can. Experiment. Sometimes they come out better than others, but the taste is going to be amazing, and that's what matters the most. So yeah, these are nice little like little wheat stalks. I think that's where the name comes from. But yeah, I'm going to put them on this cooling rack over here and let them cool off. And then I'll show you guys what they look like when we cut them up. Okay, just going to finish up the video, show you guys the new starter that we were making. Looking really good, tons of bubbles. It gave a full rise after about 5 or 6 hours. And this is looking actually really quite good. So what I'll do is double this again. So I'm going to add in another 8 spoonfuls, and then I'm going to bake a full bread with this tomorrow. So I'll say this is pretty much ready to go. It will definitely work for giving a full kilo of bread rise. And basically just want to show you guys this. The bread has now cooled, so it's good to slice it up. You pretty much never usually want to slice into warm bread because it gets kind of like a funny texture afterward unless you eat the whole thing. Now, I have been known on occasion to do that, or especially like at parties. Sometimes I've had bread and we've, as a group, just eaten the whole thing. That's totally fine, and there is this, special kind of joy to eating warm bread. But usually, if you're not planning on eating the whole thing, I recommend just letting it fully cool off and then slice it up. And just, cut a few pieces off the end here just to show you guys what it looks like on the inside. I think it's got a really nice crumb, and it's very soft. It's got a nice, crust. Yeah, you can really see the flax seeds in there as well. Again, really nice bread, super hearty, really goes well with just about anything. Sweet, savory, doesn't matter. It's really delicious. Give it a shot. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Make it for Thanksgiving. Check out my video about Thanksgiving. I'm encouraging everybody to, make a vegan Thanksgiving for yourselves, or at the very least make one vegan meal to go for your Thanksgiving celebration. And this goes really great. You can, give everybody a little piece to go with their dinner, or, makes a great dessert even with some nice homemade jam or what have you. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, give it a good thumbs up and share it with your friend. And if you do follow this and, make your own bread, please definitely let me know how that turned out. I'd love to hear about that. And yeah, see you in the next one. Bye.